do a brief introduction. So thanks everyone for coming. It's all good. Treats are in the back.
Here, I should move this so that you're in this, right?
That's okay. No, don't do that because it's all set
I can
up.
always move it back. That's not
That's
a
all right.
big deal.
We're good. Anyway, we're thanks for being here. We're videotaping this just so that you can have the benefit of being able to watch and listen to the information that's being shared from Hilary and Brett. And again, thanks for being here and doing the prep to inform people and let us know. So thanks so much. Did you have anything you wanted to say, Paul? Or?
Oh, I mean, you ask the minister to say something, they're going to say something, right? I was just thinking how, when I look back in my life, many of my happiest thoughts are times when I was able to just help somebody, you know, and just take away a financial problem that kept them from doing what they needed to do. I mean, I was in a company once just working, and there was this guy who married this woman, and they couldn't afford to go back to Georgia where her folks were for them to meet them, right? And without it, you know, I just gave them the tickets and said, don't say anything, right? That just felt good. And now that I'm a parent with kids, you know, two of my boys have houses now, right? That we were able to help them get. That feels good. I got a third, a daughter, and she's not in the right position yet, but we'll help her eventually. But I also, you know, we don't want to cripple our kids by over giving. I'm a big fan of Warren Buffett, eh? And I think what he did with his kids is he bought them a home and gave them $1 million, you know? And that still gave them a chance to see what they could do and to feel a need to do something themselves. So, you know, it's a balance kind of thing. And in my last church, as you know, churches are in decline and most people come up with weird ideas. It's just about immigration. Service clubs, religious organizations in Canada, you can try all the growth and decline to immigration. And so 80% of immigrants now aren't Christian. And so the Muslim is booming, right? And the Christians who are immigrating, they're either Pentecostals from Africa or they're Pentecostals or Roman Catholics from the Philippines. So those two churches are getting a bit of a bump. But there is a market that we are unaware of, and that is people from many churches who've left because of the judgment, the guilt, or they were kicked out for rules and, you know, regulations, churches of different kinds. And they'd like to be in a spiritual community, but they really don't trust it anymore. And they can't even imagine a place where they can just be who they are and think what they think without encountering some poison trip line where all of a sudden, you know, you're not welcome anymore. And so I went into a church in the east side of London. They were down to about 60 people. And so I worked with them, and they were really up for, well, yeah, let's be clear, United Church, we don't judge you for what you think, right? We're basically about values, kindness, respect, and fairness, so let's make that clear. And let's convert to a community center that also offers spiritual programming, right? Instead of a church that has a few other things. But we needed the building was a mess. So we were able to get a lot of grants because of our approach, about $600,000, that kind of stuff. But the only money they had when I came was from the sale of their manse, about $180,000. And we were getting all this capital money, but we hadn't implemented our new plan yet of the community center, and so we were running out of money for budget. And it looked like we were just gonna have to close. And then this dear woman passed away, and she left money to the hospital, to the Cancer Society, and $150,000 to Trinity. Well, it saved the day. And I often told the folks years later, because I was there for 18 years, and we brought in 240 members, 90% of who weren't United Churches. They were this other group from many other churches. And I said, you know, everybody who's been helped here, the funerals, help supporting people with illness, suicides, the whole gamut of human reality and challenge. Like Jean, who gave that money, like she made all that happened in part, right? Without her, it couldn't have happened. And so, like, I think of our wealth as like a battery where we've put all this energy into it, all this work into it, and at the right time in the right place, it just saves the day and it makes something possible that otherwise couldn't be. And so I'm really interested in this too. As I look, I'm not getting younger, so I've got to be thinking about these things too. So thank you to the two of you for sharing your thoughts, and I look forward to hearing it.
So I think I'm first up.
Yep, go ahead.
I do the short stuff. So I used to joke about, years ago when I was a kid and we belonged to the United Church, when I was in Sunday school, we had to memorize the books of the Bible. And the only reason I did that is because I knew I got a chocolate bar for it. And it made me realize, I always remember that because I think although our church, the United Church, we follow the Bible, we learn those lessons. I always described my involvement with the church as being part of community. And it was a gathering of similarly minded community people. That's what I like, not huge sort of into the Bible messages, although we all follow that. So that's what I really, that's what I love. So fast forward, to what I do. I do a lot of wills and a lot of estate planning and a lot of estate administration. So I see both sides. And if I can be really I'm just going to be very frank. Right now we're experiencing the largest intergenerational wealth transfer that our province has ever seen. In other words, a lot of money transferring from, your generation to the next. And the next generation has done fairly well on their own. So I encounter a lot of people who sit and sort of wring their hands and say, well, I guess I have to give it to my kids. When in fact, lots of times, kids might not deserve it. They don't need it. And, Jean or Michael has been very involved in something that they would, I guess people feel apologetic about leaving something to an organization rather than their family, even if they haven't seen their family. I see clients who have far-flung nieces and nephews that they've never been visited by them, and they feel obligated. So the first thing I say to people is, you have no obligation to give money to anyone generally, unless there are pre-existing circumstances like a dependent that you actually support them, which is not likely, with older folks. So you can do with your money what you want, and give it to. I've often told them that they can always give it to their favorite lawyer, but that hasn't worked yet. I'm still looking. But we have that sense that it's got to go to family, and I've seen many similar cases where people have given money to organizations, and the organizations just heaves a huge sigh of relief that that's the thing they needed to keep going. So if our church is focused on community, I figured, the people in our church are likewise community minded, and I know they are. I've seen them all involved in things I've been involved in. And so the first thing to remember is that you don't have an obligation, and people still think they have to give it to family. You do not. The other thing is people say, well, I just don't know how much to give because I don't know how much I'm going to have, and I need that money to live. That's absolutely true. But the way I describe it is, you look at your estate, meaning everything you own when you pass away. Look at it like a pizza or a pie, and you just divide it into slices, and you give as many slices as you'd like to whoever you'd like, whether it be the church or a community foundation or the Cancer Society. And so each slice might be worth $100, each slice might be worth $100,000, but it's just a mathematical calculation to determine how much they get. And either way, you're giving, when they call it percentages or shares, you're giving an organization a bit of money and a bit of help to keep going. So you can certainly do that, and it's very simple. It's not something that it doesn't cost more. At least not when I do them. You know, it's just, that's basic planning. And then, the one thing I would say, I always try to caution people, you know, when you're giving to an organization, please try to give it to the organization for their general purposes rather than a specific purpose. The example I use is a typical, you know, I've given $500,000 to the organ fund at the church, and you know, the organ has just been refurbished, so your money sits there for 20 years not being able to be used. You know, it's bound by those restrictions. So I think the best way, you know, I've been on a number of organizations where, you know, the best way to get the money is sort of free and clear of those restrictions so that, you know, the organization can use it as they need it for the greatest needs at that time. So it is easy. The one benefit, and I think you're going to touch on this, is you know, a donation to a charity in your will allows you to get a charitable donation tax credit on your final tax return. So just like you do as an individual when you file your tax return, you get albeit small, but a tax credit for a donation. Likewise, your estate does. And we've seen the tax payable go down significantly that way. So, and I was going to mention one thing, and you may touch on this, Brett, but the other thing that I am just going to sort of mention, not necessarily to do with wills, but estate planning. The older generation that we have now that's, you know, passing on, they've been extraordinarily diligent in RRSP savings that now, of course, they've diligently waited till they were 71 to transfer or convert those into RIFs or retirement income funds. What a lot of people don't know is that when you pass away and that RIF or retirement income fund is essentially collapsed, all of the money in that is income. It's not capital gain, it's all income. So if you've diligently saved, as the generation, you know, the older generation has, and you pass away with a whole whack of money in that gets added to your income for the year. So if you have $300,000 in your RIF, you will have, you know, 300 plus your usual pension income for that year, in which case we all know how much the government takes when you're up at that level. And I have very begrudgingly, on behalf of estate trustees, written huge checks to the government when that's happened. And so I always say to people, you know, if you'd rather have your money used for other things rather than pay it to the government, then you can take a little more out of your RIF, whittle it down more, you pay the government less, and maybe even use that money for your favorite charity, be it the church or whatever. So I hope that explains a bit.
Yeah, thanks, Hilary.
Yeah.
What I was going to discuss tonight is just a couple different alternatives to helping donate or support a charity that is close to your heart. So traditionally, when most people think of supporting a charity, they're just donating money. They write a check, they drop off cash, or more commonly now, probably go online and just do it directly off their credit card. As Hilary suggested, you give them the money, they accept it, and then they issue you a tax receipt. You get the charitable tax credit, which helps you out this time of year when you go to file your taxes. What a lot of people don't realize is there is some other alternatives that can be even more tax efficient in the right circumstance. That circumstance would be if you do have some investments. Most often it would have to be in a non-registered account, which means not an RSP, not a RIF, not a tax-free savings account, but in a taxable account where capital gains would be due. So to use a pretty simple example, if you bought shares in a company, say Bell Canada or the commonly held Canadian companies, if you bought it 10, 15, 20 years ago, if you put $3,000 in there, it could very realistically be about $10,000 right now. So there's a $7,000 accrued capital gain. You don't pay taxes on it now, but when you go to sell it, tax is owed on a portion of that. So you pay tax on 50% of the gain. So in this case, it'd be $3,500. If you're in a high tax bracket, it could be $1,600, $1,700 in tax due. So what a lot of people don't realize is if you gift those investments in kind, they waive that capital gains tax. So essentially, if you donate some investments in kind, the charity gets the full amount, you get the full amount in your tax receipt, and then they waive that capital gains. So an example I would use is if you had about $10,000 sitting in your checkings account, you were thinking about donating to a cause that's close to you, but you also had those $10,000 in Bell shares that have gone up $7,000, you would be way better off donating those shares. The church or whatever organization gets the full $10,000. You get the tax receipt for the full $10,000, but you don't pay any capital gains on there. And then in the perfect situation, you take that $10,000 from your bank, put it in your investment account, and buy those Bell Canada shares back, and reset the book value or the adjusted cost base at $10,000. And moving forward, you don't have nearly as much of a gain to use. I think the number one reason for anyone to donate to a charity is to support it. You know, it's something that's close to you, you want to help them out, and there's a lot of really good meaning and well-intended charities in town that depend on their community for help. But there is also that tax benefit that a lot of people don't want to forget about. So I think if you're sitting there and you're thinking about making a donation to a local charity, but you also have some investments sitting in your account that have some accrued capital gains, you're far better off investing those, and it saves you money in taxes, the charity gets the same benefit, and then you get even more of a taxable benefit. So that's one thing, that's kind of a simple way to really make a difference to something important to you or an organization important to you, but also have some pretty significant tax savings. Another tool that can be used is life insurance. That would normally be a more significant gift. As Hilary suggested, the biggest tax bill you probably ever get is the one you receive after your death. The simplest way to leave a gift to an organization through life insurance is to take out the policy yourself and name the organization as the beneficiary. There's some benefits to that, including it would bypass probate, the delays and the fees involved with that. It can't be challenged by anybody, and it's also private. It's not a public record if it's left in a will. You do not get to deduct any of the premiums you're paying, because you keep paying those life insurance premiums until you pass away. But once you pass away, that full amount of the policy, say it's for $100,000, generates a tax slip, which can really help your estate cover the final tax bill. There is kind of a more complex way where you transfer ownership of the life insurance policy to the organization. In that case, you get to, your premiums that you're paying do qualify for a charitable tax receipt, but the final policy amount does not. So the main difference would be whether you want to name your organization as the beneficiary, get the tax benefits after your death, or transfer ownership of the entire policy to their organization and get the tax benefits as you pay your premiums every year. So those are just a couple fairly simple ways of helping out a charity or an organization that's important to you, helping make an impact, helping leave a legacy, but also maximizing the tax efficiencies you can get from that. So I don't know if there was any questions here, but that's...
I'm just going to make, what you just reminded me of something. But the one thing, you want to be careful that you, if you're going to do something like that, and you're going to Brett, just make sure, you know, I'm sure someone like Brett would say, okay, let's make sure we have the correct name of the organization. Because you do have a lot of cases, case law, you know, in the courts where similar organizations, but believe me, they fight for the money when there's a lot of money to be had. So, you know, you look up in a list of registered charities with CRA to make sure, or your lawyer would make sure you get the right name on the organization. You know, like there's the Breast Cancer Foundation, and there's a Canadian Cancer Society, and there's a bunch of others in between. And you want to make sure that you do get the right name. When you mentioned those shares, I will tell you that I had a client who had, from the day she started working at TD, she accumulated, and she started working as a teenager, you know, 18, 19, accumulated TD shares. And she had a whack of these shares in an account, and it was going to incur a huge capital gain and, of course, tax cost. So she gifted those to a charitable organization, and no tax, wow. And she was thrilled to be able to do that. It made a huge difference to the organization.
A lot of people just aren't aware of that, because it happened at our office where we were reading the paper and we saw a client of ours going to be a gift is a lot bigger than $10,000 to a local charity, and their picture was in there with the check and everything. and you're looking at their account thinking, wow, you could have,
Yep.
if you told us that, we could have done that a lot differently.
Yeah.
The charity would have got the same amount, you would have got the same credit, but your taxes embedded in your account would have been reduced significantly. So it's just, a lot of people are not aware that you can do it like that. So I think the more people you can make aware, that would be great for a lot of organizations.
And when I do things with wills, if people are thinking about that and they're not sure, the first thing I will do is say, you talk to your advisor, you talk to your accountant, or all of them, and we work on that together, because that's the kind of thing you don't want to miss. If your clients have that kind of opportunity, then you don't do it the most, simplistic way necessarily, right?
The other benefit of the life insurance route is you can change your mind, you can change your beneficiaries, and it's not like changing your will. You just simply change a beneficiary, and you can add something, you can alter it, so you retain that flexibility to move things around.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Okay, well, thanks for having us out tonight.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom, and yeah, we'll post this too so that some others can have a look. And,
Great.
Absolutely.
You're open to questions
Sure.
down the
Yeah,
line.
yeah, no
there
problem.
you go.
No
Perfect.
problem.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
Thanks, everyone.
Again, thanks everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.